Well, hello everybody. It's not that bad. I know it looks bad. I know it feels bad. I know it smells bad, but sometimes it's just not that bad, even though it could be that bad. Uh, but again, we're here, so that's a good thing. That's positive. That shows that no matter what the perceived or perception of the world is, we got at least us. We got favor. Speaking of favor, I'll speak that over us right now. It's kind of like our invocation, we come in and we just speak the favor vibe, and that kind of gives everyone that feeling that, hey, I'm included in that. You are. We like to say nothing missing, nothing broken, because that is peace. I don't know if there's a perfect peace, but I know there's a peace that is above our understanding. That's cool. And then finally, uh, we're learning this because, this has dividends that we don't even realize. Be kind to your mind. All right. That was the show. Have a great day. We will see you later.
Thanks, Wayne.
Yes. Hey, everybody. How you doing? This is Thursday, and this is when we are favored to have the company, the energy, and the presence of Mike and Cindy from Evolutionary Energy Arts. How are you two doing?
Doing great.
Good, good. Hanging in there, doing things, keeping busy and just kind of watching the cosmos like everyone else.
Yeah, I'm. I have plucked at the guitar and I'm taking it now seriously. So that's another thing I'm doing. I figured that, if this end is coming, whether it's the Nibiru, whether it's this comet, whether it's us talking about the Homo sapiens sapiens, I thought, well, this is good enough time to really start perfecting on that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love guitar.
See, that's what I'm talking about. It's an interesting because, I'm learning now how to get the chords, and I guess you know this, Michael, because the fingers. Holy crap! It's. I was watching Stevie Ray Vaughan earlier, and I can't help but not think about him and people like Jimmy Page. Y'all must they must have thick calluses on their fingertips.
Yeah, you have to get them conditioned. Absolutely. And if you let it go for a little while, they get soft and then it hurts again.
See, that's
Yep.
that's that's what I'm talking about. But I figure it's like this again. If all of this is coming down, and it certainly seems like we were just talking before we went live that, and I'll let y'all bring it up because I saw your video. It was posted just so big. It's a big happening, and we should have enough discernment. You should have these ears, these things, they're antennas. They should be going off. So tell us what is developing as we sit here.
Oh, there's so much going on right now. We just did a update talking about the fact that there's all sorts of hundreds of military personnel, generals, colonels, all different levels being pulled into the Pentagon. The question is it foreign or domestic? Is it like last night in Oregon, you had a couple instances with Antifa going on, some arrests were made. Is it more about that? And, again, the attacks on ICE and the mobilization. Is it, well, what comments that Trump made recently talking about Russia being a paper tiger, that, hey, they'll just keep supplying NATO with weapons because that's what we do. But if you want to have your war, then have it. So is it the greater war, or there's also this other undercurrent too? There's groups that talk about white hats that are rounding up all these dark satanic beings that have really been running the show. So is there truth to that? Where they're actually rooting them out, weeding them away, and are preparing to cleanse us of what we would call, that dark cabal that's been running this show. Is it a combination of all those? You know, there's also in Europe, you have another situation with drones shutting down airports multiple times. And it's starting to feel very similar to what we had in the US like a year ago, with all the drones. And yeah, they appear to be very, very solid. They seem to be very technical. They're not mind-blowingly advanced, but they're not what we're used to. So is it secret military? Is it Space Force, you know, fighting the bad guys, you know, part of the white hats, black hats thing? There's a lot of confusion. There's definitely a lot of things going on.
Well, I'm drawn to several things. You know, I was back when Obama was in office, I was very politically active. And when Congress passed the Financial Wall Street Reform Act of 2009, in that piece of legislation, there is a specific article in there that allows the president, and it's the law, it allows the president at any time to declare a national emergency, suspending habeas corpus, and declaring martial law. He is allowed to do that under the Patriot Act. I believe it's 90 days, and he can extend it another 90 days by notifying Congress near the end. So that basically gives the president unilateral powers. He suspends Congress, he suspends the Supreme Court. He now, and this is in the Patriot Act. I mean, you know, I have always worried about this. I've talked to congresswomen and men, senators even, and they say that there's nothing they can do to revoke that. Now, it hasn't been ever been done, but I'm having this sense that I don't, there's so much Russia buzzing us yesterday, you know, with their newest MiGs. You know, you've got, like you all mentioned, Trump. That was historic what happened on Tuesday. Historic. It was a declaration for me, and I wrote it on my channel on the comments that that was a declaration of war. He said NATO needs to come in. That was the green light that they've been waiting for. We've got this domestic war here now. The Charlie Kirk thing is, by the very nature of its force, it is morphing into something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And you know, when you're talking about that act too, I've read it, you know, made a few videos talking about it years ago. They could literally take anybody's property at any time, and they could also put us to forced labor, you know, in one of those emergencies. They could commandeer your property and put you to work. Just that simple.
And it's this little FYI, you know, I consider myself an American. I've had the best life because of America. So, but yeah, it's we are in such this precipitous precipice. How's that for good English, huh?
I like it.
I get a gold star for that one. But
You
anyway,
you do. Good job.
you see what happens when you don't have a high school diploma? But anyway, we're there. And it just seems like Trump gave the ultimatum to the UN. And then I heard J.D. Vance yesterday, and I'm just, you know, there's a certain protocol presidents, vice presidents, you know, et cetera, are supposed to maintain. You know, it's just demeanor. But when you hear the vice president call a reporter a dipshit, I mean, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, okay.
I look at it all, you know, in an energetic aspect. I mean, Mike covers the politics. You're great with politics, and I'm not. But I do look at the energy surrounding, and I see so much turmoil going on within people, as within, so without. And a lot of people are at war with themselves. You know, they're tired of the trauma. They're tired of fighting it themselves. They're tired of this shadow being that they have to deal with all the time. They just want to get it taken care of, you know, kick them out or make them get along. And I see that reflected out into the world. It's like these dark forces, light forces are, they're good. They have to come together. They have to, and it's going to boom. So that's what I'm seeing energetically, you know.
We
I
did
got a
get,
bit. Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, Wayne, we did get to get like a little bit more towards today's topic that you were bringing up about who is watching us, who's caring really about what happens.
Yeah.
We did get that the comments, and well, what's being called comments, they're really, none of those are malevolent, and in fact, in some ways, you could actually call them angelic beings. You know, because original translations are really all about messengers, and they are here in some cases monitoring our frequency, our vibration, where we're at, our consciousness. They're also here to inspire new thoughts and new revelations. Again, we've gone through that Kali Yuga where we didn't have a clue. We might have thought we had it all figured out, but we didn't have a clue. And I know you know that as much as anybody, if not more. When the deeper you go into the Bible, you start realizing, whoa, so this is not that what everybody believes. Well, that's the reality with planet Earth. It's been absolutely upside down, inside out. Black is white, white is black. It's whatever the system has said. It's almost like the exact opposite is the truth. And these entities are watching, and they are also, I do think they're encouraging us to think in a bigger manner.
And they are watching, in putting this show together. I knew we would be talking on this, and I wanted to share with you. Yeah. So the government knows about this. This is the U.S. Forest Service. This is from their Rangers catching multiple UFOs. The U.S. Forest Service also has a manual on what forest fire workers are to do if they encounter a crashed UFO. This Our government knows about this. This is from the State Department. This was a memorandum that went out over a decade ago talking about Drake and his formula of what extraterrestrial life is. But this is it. One other one, um, you know, they got a fully illustrated, up-to-date field guide to. So the point to all this being is that this is not hyperbole. This is not conspiracy, far out of bounds thinking. This is what's happening. I mean, this is just my personal, my dad worked for NASA. I met all the Apollo astronauts,
Wow.
had the privilege in 2013 was flying back from Orlando to Houston, Texas, and had the privilege of Gene Cernan sitting right next to me. And we had a delightful conversation about the moon. He was the last human to have stepped on the moon. But one thing he did tell me as I was getting up and leaving, and because I helped him down the walkway to the plane, he said, "We're not alone." That's just what he said. We're not alone. So it kind of just tells me that, all right, they've known about it. Wasn't it Ronald Reagan? I was told Colonel North was talking to him and telling him about something that was inbound to our solar system. And Reagan asked, can we save as many people? And the Pentagon said, no, it's impossible. We just can't. And so it has been that policy, the unwritten spoken policy of the United States government, that's just the elites that will be the ones saved. It's coming. And Reagan was told, I think this was in 85, 86, that it was on a 55 to 70 year time scale coming in.
Mm-hmm. Mhm.
Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it's well versed among people that, and I was at one time a registered lobbyist there. It's not, how should we say, taboo.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm. Oh
Jenny,
yeah.
you're shaking your head over there. Does that resonate with you?
Really strong, the types of beings that are here. I think a lot of them do already know, or they carry the truth inside of them. I think they're very human looking. I think there's a lot there in Washington, D.C. that are very human looking, but they don't have our DNA, but they can walk and act and talk and be. I don't know how far that's going to be before they actually admit it. But I do look at the little drones that you were talking about in the pictures, and I feel grays all over those. I feel grays, whether the grays are operating them. I also feel our military dealing with them, definitely knowing about them. Um, there's just so much going on here in the 3D. And when it comes to, are we going to get any assistance? I just, that's going to come energetically. And that's going to come when we are ready to heal ourselves and become energetically sensitive to get the information we need to do what's best for us for the ascension. I mean, I think the ascension is inevitable. I don't think it's going to be what we would perceive as a really beautiful thing. Ascension might be very difficult, and it might come in the form of a lot of trauma, a lot of earth happenings, really scary earth happenings. So we get back to our roots, and we get back to, understanding what it truly is to live with the earth. And we've been so separated. So
I can.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I can remember back in the days of the charismatic movement when, the church was growing. We were really religious activists, if you think about it. But the one thing that would always unite us, when we were meeting in home groups and meeting in the larger groups, was that the rapture is going to happen. Um, I actually knew, he has since passed, the author of the Left Behind series. And the why that particular ideology is so important for back when I was in Christianity was that it gave us the free ticket to get out of this mess. We weren't going to have to suffer. We weren't going to have to be involved in all this turmoil and chaos. We were going to be caught away into the cloud, transformed at a blinking of an eye from a body to a spirit, supposedly, and we would be looking down on earth as the earth went to hell in a handbasket.
That's just escaping. That's just
Isn't
wanting
it? Yeah, it's
to escape.
it's escapism is what it is
Yeah,
psychologically.
psychologically, and kind of training people. It doesn't matter what you do, you're going to be able to get out of here. And we're all going to have to face our karma. It doesn't matter if we don't face it in this 3D reality. We're going to have to face it somewhere. So I think it's about getting right with where you're at and what you're doing to the best of your ability.
Can you let's talk about the aspect, people are sensing this, but at the same time, there is a part of humanity. I have never seen such intense hate. I mean, there are those, and they will not be spoken here on this channel, but there are those outlets that, how I see it psychically, it is just venomous, and it seems to be unchecked and growing. And this has happened before. Jenny was right on this when it's got the feel of the late 20s, early 30s of the 20th century.
Mhm, mhm.
But we have something that's now even more insidious. Did y'all read what happened with Musk and Trump, at the Charlie Kirk memorial service? They apparently buried the hatchet. And then today, Musk with Tesla announced that from here on out, the United States government will be deploying Gork, the AI, into every um, uh, agency within the government. So now AI is here.
We have that. It was it the EU has their own AI leader now. What was her name?
Well, you're talking about the the leader of the European Union.
Yeah.
President Ursula.
No,
Yeah.
not Ursula. There was an AI woman.
Oh,
just
that's
covered.
right. Yeah, we did cover that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there is an AI, there's a fake AI, what do you call that? Representative, for European Parliament out there that will
She's
try
gonna
to
make
try
the
to
decisions.
try
Yeah.
to make decisions on disputes.
It's official.
But the reality is, again, this is part of what was here with that invasion that I go back to the Younger Dryas period and that extinction event being like a first blow and then coming down in mass, merging, mingling, and starting to, take over the systems that were already on Earth. As far as timelines, it's really confusing. It really, really is. It's hard to, I mean, some people say that we have an extra 1,000 years put in there, and we covered that recently on a couple of videos. Anatoly Fomenko is a Russian scientist, a brilliant man. He believes that, there's 1,000 years that didn't exist. And that really, we're at right now, like the year 1025, relatively speaking, that it's all just fluff. It's all just, BS history that was implanted to give us the feeling that the power structure has been in place much longer than it really has. And then there was another
And who's behind that? Because I agree with you. The Tartarians. I mean, we completely just. Well, I'm sorry, you did not pull the right number out. You're out of here.
Yeah.
Gaps in the history.
Yeah,
gaps in catastrophes.
We put in. I don't know if you saw it, but last night we talked about Barron Trump's tweet talking about 1776 in Tartaria and saying that 1776 was the year this system took over. Literally, this system took effect. And that was from Barron Trump's official account. It's like tons of people following it. It's a curious tweet there, to say everything is inside out and upside down. So we do know that a slight majority of the founders of the U.S. were Freemasons. And in some ways, it was supposed to be the new Atlantis. But what does that really, really mean? Which side of Atlantis? Because Atlantis existed and deteriorated over time and was infiltrated by the beings that came and emerged from Mars after Mars was, all that destruction from Mars took place. By the way, you were just talking about blowing the shofar. We're talking about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. What's the shofar?
It's the ram's horn.
In a ram, yeah, ram, Aries, Mars. And Mars is all desert. And when you look to, the allegories of Moses, and some people say Moses was Akhenaten, and going through the desert. Well, the desert could be symbolism for Mars too. And there's so much deep down intertwined, so purposely mixed up. Yes, when you do get to the higher levels of masonry, then they will let you in on some of the secrets as you go. There's the thought that after the 33 levels of masonry, there's like 66 satanic levels beyond that. It's just it's interesting to say the least.
Well, when you were talking about Byron, and this is no slide in any way, so I was drawn to go back and rewatch the Omen movies, particularly the first one in '76 with Gregory Peck and that all-star cast that was in that, because the writers of that one, there's a lot of background. But I swear to you, when I was watching this, and I told Lynn this, I said, the Damon Baron similarities, maybe it's just my messed up mind, but I'm thinking, because that is one dude that, is walking into, well, I'll put it this way, he'll never have to worry about, how the rent's being paid, but the forces that are behind this, And then that gets into the whole thing. So, are these really angels? Are these really demons? Are these really gods or goddesses? Are these just simply the alien races that I guess now officially there's what 26 that have been cataloged and recorded. Actually, I got one of the documents on there. And is this their agenda that's really unfolding, or are we just at that cycle, Michael? Particularly, you would see it some insight of the collapse. I mean, NASA believes that there was an advanced humanid type creature being here on Earth 2 to 3 million years ago that had even more advanced technology than we can even think of. But they ain't here no more. I mean,
Right.
is
Right.
that where the cycle is?
I think, again, when we look to the Kali Yuga, that's that time period where, the ideology of the church is dominating, where everything is thought to be just, those words, angels, demons, you have a God, and there's us, humans. And, when we get to a Bronze Age, then we know there's all sorts of beings. That's why I love the ultra-terrestrial word. That does feel so much better than trying to explain extraterrestrials, but there's interdimensionals, but there are beings that are under the sea and inside the earth.
I need an org chart, please.
Yeah, we just need a big word that encompasses all of that. So most of our history, the vast majority of our history, the reason why we all have these myths and legends of seeing these beings all the time, it was commonplace. It's because they were with us all the time, cohabitating. And we do have that even in the record. I was listening to this guy, Guy Anderson, being interviewed by this really nice English gentleman. And Cindy found it a little dull, but I thought it was really fun because, yeah, they were starting to get me to rethink some of my timeline ideas because they were talking also about what Barron had said, 1776. And, if that 1,000 years is really just fluff, how long has this system really been in place? How long have we not known that there's all these beings around us? It's really curious because we're in that Bronze Age again, so we're gonna know that there's other beings, way more technology, way more understanding than we have of how the universe works. We'll probably see them for ourselves, introduced in the next year or two, probably. I don't see how it could go much more than a couple of years before we have that acknowledgement. And I
I
think,
mean,
go ahead.
no, I was just thinking the King's List, in the
Yeah,
Sumerian record. I mean, so if we take that, we know that humans have at least been here at least almost a 500,000 or more years.
yep. Yeah, Susan Donahue there, she just said monarch means one archon. The
Yes.
Gnostics had so much right, because they were also like when we look to that time, what was that time really like? It felt very oppressive. It felt like the system was just really working on taking over everything and squashing everything that went against it. And it just morphed. The Roman Empire, then you have the Holy Roman Empire, then the British Empire. The root right now is still kind of the EU, I think, as far as the root of the quote unquote globalists or dark cabal. It's I do think that's the fullest portion of it. So then you start wondering, Tartary and Tartaria, well, it's always around Russia in the maps. It was probably a much bigger society. Perhaps maybe it wasn't even Russia that was the center point of it. Maybe it was the United States, again, and Canada, North America. It's interesting that there are Russian residue of them being over here on our west coast, all the way down to like the San Fran area. We know that Russian explorers, traders, etc., were in the entire west coast, Alaska, Western Canada. We know that for a fact. But what what if, again, the history is not what we're told? Because, when you look at the Civil War, a lot of people have picked up that there's something off about that. And it's happening at the same time as major wars in Europe. In fact, the wars have never stopped. They've always been ongoing. We've actually been in one of the periods where there's less wars. Like the last 50 years, there's really been less war on the bigger scale than we've had in the times preceding it. Um, just horrible warfare has gone on nonstop. And it really is the same system trying to exert its dominance as pockets of resistance keep popping up around the planet from, maybe you could say a little bit more indigenous beings than the ones that came in last.
I don't know. I feel at some point, if you look to the Vedas about all the different species that have been here, there's like so many, like hundreds of thousands of different species have been here. And it's normal. It was normal when you read the stories for someone to look up and say, "Oh, hey, there's so and so in their airship, flying off to their loca or whatever."
Mm-hmm.
And if you look to Vedic astrology, I find it interesting. Under the nakshatra, which is the star rising in the east when you were born, you can see what kind of being you came here to be. It's under something called Gana, and that's the soul. What is your soul? And there's the demon. And when I say that, I don't mean the demon with horns and a tail. It's more of a Devic spirit, human and Deva. And the demons, they came here to really push back and change society. And they came here to create a different way of being. And the humans came here to make things better, and whatever is given to them they make better and they give it back to the universe. The devas, they just like to sing and dance and enjoy life and drink and be merry, and if they can't do that, they lay on somebody else's couch. So that's okay. To each their own. But that kind of got me curious in astrology about the souls.
That's interesting about the soul because in my meditation this morning, I was thinking on that very aspect of the soul. Um, because in all of this discussion, there's still confliction within. For instance, if you study the Anunnaki, they say that they were the only ones here and that there was a complex hierarchy above them, but they left. And then you think about the Anunnaki that were actually made by Enki, Enlil, and the Herzog. Then, you have the giants, and then you have us. And it can get really confusing. It's like, all right, so what's the story? What I was receiving this morning, and I'll just read it to you. We have to understand, like in the beginning, we are told that that was the beginning of everything. But what we're not being told was actually in the beginning is a false beginning. There was a war that was already underway, a war against the goddess, the creator of the divine realms. She and she alone is the one who stood supreme. Um, that this battle is to move the goddess out. And then I suddenly got into this thing is that, all right, so what distinguished the male above the female? Well, it was the fact that this being, this usurper, whatever you want to call him, God, said he breathed in to Adam a living soul. So the philosopher in me goes, okay, well, wait a minute. For number one, we don't have a reference of how long this Adam was without a living soul. So what was he? And if there was a living soul breathed into him, it was of an alien nature, and it obviously changed him. It altered him. So that the human that he is no longer that human. And the salvation is for the woman is the fact that she never had this living soul breathed into her. Anyway, welcome
Did
to my world.
did I'm thinking about duality at one point when, we'll call these beings just a being, and is bringing about the feminine, is that bringing about just duality itself, you know?
What's been going on, what I see is, they want to create a passive group of people. more passive order takers, good soldiers. They want good soldiers. They need people to carry out, the orders that they give. They don't want intelligent people. We were showing this morning, IQs around the world are dropping off a cliff. I mean,
bad.
it's horrible. You only have two countries with average IQ over 100 at this point in time. It's mind blowing in reality how much we've fallen, but it's totally cultivated. It's completely cultivated. And that for the most part, the countries with the higher IQs are facing population crisis. They have declining population, they have declining reproduction. They're not having kids. It's totally done on purpose because, again, they want the ones that make it through to be very, very easy to manipulate and control. That's really what's been going on since the beginning of the time. Some of the most uncontrollable ones would have been the giants that actually were, again, ultra-terrestrials that were living with us in a peaceful manner. This is why, again, Yahweh, is going around leading again, he's the Lord of hosts, right? So he's a warlord. That's what he is. He's a warlord. And he's going out slaughtering all the ones that have the most knowledge, have the most power, have the most capability to be a pain or thorn in his side, pain in his butt. And that's what we see, throughout the Old Testament. And the same thing happened over here. We have reports, again, like when the conquistadors came, when the other European explorers and then eventually colonizers came. They encountered giants in various places, and everybody seemed to, for the most part, over here, get along okay. And yeah, sure, there were different things going on between different tribes and all, but the reality is, it's fascinating to see that you have the same sort of procedures that happen. You have, the conquistadors when they come in, then there's plagues and, all sorts of pestilence that comes. Now we just say, well, the people here weren't exposed to those bugs, those viruses, so they had no natural immunity. But there's other accounts too that talk about strange omens in the skies, strange clouds. And so we think about, geoengineering, we think about chemtrails, things like that. I think when you look closer at the biblical accounts and also the myths and the legends from, again, the European colonizers, you see that often it's plague that comes first. And you literally have Yahweh saying, don't worry, I'm going to send you over here. Wait a minute. No, there's giants over there. They're too big for us to handle. Don't worry. I'm going to go there first. I'm going to wipe them out with a plague. You come in, get rid of the rest. It is totally about, complete genetic manipulation. When you look to UFOs and the abduction phenomenon, what's at the core of it? They're always testing us. They're always looking at genetic material, genetic markers. They're testing for all sorts of toxicities. They're testing for all sorts of toxicities. It's all about creating the right alien ant farm.
That's the Anunnaki story, though. They said that the human experiment is still going on.
Yeah.
And I happen to think that if the Sumerian record is to be believed, and many historians are saying that it is, then I wonder if this is just a grand play that all these ideas that we've been talking about is just merely a diversion from really seeing who the real culprits were. And I want to address, I saw a female angel on there. No, the goddess never surrendered. In fact, in my notes right here, as I was writing this, the goddess has not surrendered anything. The fact of the matter is, her presence, the fact that we even talk about her, shows that the plan failed. And the pendulum of reality for me is that a force cannot be maintained in an indefinite state. Eventually, the opposing force of the force itself will begin to swing back. But I don't know. Maybe that's what they call another cycle. I don't know. Is that 26,500 years? Is that right?
That's the pendulum swinging, and then when you look at all this, so even right now there are people out there that are talking about, now that the people that have gone along with, the cure for the plague upon the land, And we all know what that M period, R period, and A therapy does. It literally changes, rewrites genetic coding. So, again, patents, so, are they creating a patented race that they claim ownership over? I think that's what, the Anunnaki really did, was just altered what was here and then claim ownership over it. But it was here. And in fact, I do think that Homo sapiens are a little bit less than what went before, not more than. It wasn't necessarily an improvement, maybe in some ways, maybe in warlike tendencies and certain lines of thinking, genetic predispositions. But when we look to Denisovans and Neanderthals, they were certainly more connected to the goddess, to the mother energy. They were certainly more peaceful than we are overall. They were actually bigger and stronger and had a larger brain than we do.
And
Um,
yet the sapiens wiped them out.
well, with a little help from their, Anunnaki.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you were talking about the conquistadors coming in. Yeah, they did. But what they brought with them was death. And it wasn't just in disease, it was by the very religions and the faith of the native people was completely burned out of them. Again, this God of war, this is why when we say in God we trust here in America, the vast majority have no freaking idea who God is. They got this off idea, but they don't realize it is, in fact, the God of war.
Yeah.
Um, but
That
yeah,
Lord, that Lord of hosts literally means God of war, and
yeah,
and armies. That's literally what it translates to. But and we can see that microcosm and macrocosm going on even just in our recent past. If you look to what happened with the indigenous here, it's again that group had more of a connection to the earth, more of a psychic connection with animals than the typical colonists that came over from Europe. And again, the European colonists are just being used as tools by the system. This is what the system does. It uses one group, then it decides that group's too much of a pain in the butt. We're going to replace them with another. And we talked about mass migration again being an act of war, literally going back again to Acadia, 2000 BC, which maybe that was 3000 if 1000 years are truly just made up. But you did have an Acadian king talking about that. When you take over a land, you got to uproot the people. We got to bring our own people in, or from other lands that we've conquered, we bring them in there to create a new group, have them homogenized as our subjects and push the other ones out. Now, the other ones you push out will go over to somewhere else that you want to conquer eventually anyway. And there's going to be conflict there. You could, foment that conflict with individuals placed over there to create suspicion and eventually get them having some sort of civil war strife. And then you come in and you take them over too. And this is what the system's been doing. A lot of Native American women, when they went into any of these clinics for any sort of acts of help with, child rearing, giving birth, etc., there was a lot of forced sterilizations that took place because they don't want the native indigenous population procreating because they had too much of a connection to the earth and too much intuitive ability and psychic abilities.
maybe they wanted their land too.
Well, yeah,
And when you talk about time, I have shelves full and full of historical documents. I've never read one that this is the year zero.
no.
We make this up. The people that lived in that time, they did not know it was the year zero. They didn't know it was 1000 BCE or 2000 BC. I mean, that's again, that's part of the mind um, mail that they have on us.
Just one.
People actually think that when Jesus walked around that he was saying, yeah, this is the year 33 AD. You know,
I always found what was fascinating is the
so what
fact
year
that,
was it?
well, look to what are the oldest calendars we have? We have the Hindu calendar and we have the Hebrew calendar. And when you get to this
But
era,
which Hebrew is the 13th month of the moon cycle, or are you going to go with the one that was brought in later date?
That's what I was trying to look up right now, trying to go and get the details. But they do agree that this age started about 5,127, years ago, somewhere about that. They're actually, and this is what's weird, is because they're on very different areas, and they do coincide too when we look at that with some of the Mesoamerican cycles too that are in agreement as well when we start talking about the Maya. And that's why I've always looked at that point in time as being perhaps the real beginning of the control of this control system, which again feels a little too far away from the Younger Dryas extinction event, that with what we have right now, because that was like 12,000 years ago, 12,700, when you have all those city states popping up in Mesopotamia. Again, that was probably survivors of the Atlantean catastrophe, because you also had Atlant too, and you had some islands up off of the coast of the UK over towards the Nordic countries. That was all land. Again, a lot. There was a land bridge too, from France over to Great Britain, UK, at a point in time. And then that all went under too, through great floods. So yeah, we had the big flood event, Younger Dryas event, and then we had about 5,000 to 6,000 years later another big catastrophic flood event, and then we have all of a sudden everything popping up in the Middle East, and leading the way. I think that's the system leading the way, and that's the beginning of the Abrahamic traditions. Here too, when we start looking at that, the history that they look back on, when did the Abrahamic tradition start, with Moses, or was there a real
Well,
historical
according to the Jewish
Moses?
calendar, it started about 35, 34 BCE.
Mhm. Yeah, so
That's when they say Adam was created. But
right,
that is a lie because
it's
you
coming from
you
the Sumerian.
you can't exactly. You cannot listen. I I studied this, and that's why I left the religion, because someone is lying here. And that's the point. If I have a culture that was dating 3,000 years before there was an Abram to even be talking about, and they make no mention of Yahweh, they don't mention of the Elohim, they don't mention any Jehovah, it's not in their records. So someone made that up.
Oh, absolutely.
So that has been one, Michael, that the thing that has always where I've written on this is that what God was Abraham or Abram dealing with? He comes from Ur. His family, there supposedly, is the ones that were the of the temple of Inanna, Inanna the moon goddess. So he gets up, goes out into the wilderness, meets this God, and this God is a God of blood, it's a God of sacrifice, and then he requires Abram to sacrifice and mutilate his body, which, if this was truly the God, he would have never desecrated the human body with circumcision. He'd have done it to begin with. And then we get the story of reality is around this little tiny country. In the meantime, we have Mesoamerica, we have the Aboriginals down under, we have cultures all over the world, but the whole world is concentrated, all of our prophecy, and this little tiny thing here. And for me, I'm just saying, doesn't anyone else see this? I mean, you can't have it both ways. Or maybe you can. I don't know.
Yeah, look
What's
to
your thoughts?
look to China too,
Yeah,
and
look at China. Yeah, exactly.
China's history is the best documented out there, and it's again very ancient. And they have the Dragon Kings too. We were talking to David Devine a couple of days ago, and he says
Yeah.
hi. He says hi, by the way. Um, because David really focuses in on China and that tradition a lot. So yeah, of course, the Vedic stuff, that's one of the things I've studied at length. It's just, so to me, it's hard not to look at this as a continuation of the wars between those that we call the Devas and those that we call the Asuras. And you could see too, like the chief Persian deity was Ahura Mazda, but Ahura Asura, it phonetically it's right there.
I was going to
And
say, isn't there a little similar to that?
very much so, and then we look at the people of the tribe of the goddess Dana, the Tuatha De Danann, following Danu or Dana. And it's fascinating too, because there's the same goddess in the Vedic world. And, even down to the fact that that particular goddess was an Asura who became a Deva. So that's kind of the unusual part, is that that particular being was born kind of into the lineage of demons, but was a benevolent being. And it's fascinating because you do have the opposite too. You do have some that fall and go down the other way. But it again shows the interconnectedness. People from India were traveling to Great Britain and Ireland.
I
That's
have a
just,
feeling they travel the seas.
yeah,
And you said
absolutely.
something about all these beings, these divas, the rest of them, they're all born. It means they all die too.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
the one thing about the Anunnaki and the Elohim. Well, I think it's Psalms 84 that says that the Elohim die like we do.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
just,
absolutely.
hmm.
Absolutely. Now, I don't know if I've ever asked you this before, but what's your take on the Elohist side of things in comparison to the Yahwist? Because again, we have L in a lot of places in the Bible, and then we have Yahweh in other places in the Bible. And we have places where it looks like there was a scribbling out and rewriting to a degree. Because what we've gotten in Cindy, when she taps into the energy of L, it's like a nature elemental type of energy. It's not negative. Yahweh comes across very, very reptilian, cold-blooded, but not L, not L. Remember?
Yeah, yeah. And so going back to my Bible teaching, it's like when you see an angel's name that has A-E-L or E-A-L, that is a direct, I would call it today a graft off of the Supreme Elohim, the Supreme God. It's El. Uh, Again, masculine. And, I dated a Jewish woman. I almost converted to Judaism. And what I learned amongst her family and was that the Jews don't look at God as Yahweh. That is considered to be more of the, and in fact, her grandfather told me more of the Kabbalah side of this. This was the other side. They're not allowed to even say the word, to say the name of God. They don't know the name of God. And so it seems that this Yahweh and how we golems, because none of us here are Jewish, although I do have 1% Jewish blood in me. The rabbi told me not to convert, and I listened to the rabbi. So, um, but it seems to me that this is a story that we have adapted into our philosophy, into our theology, even into our ideology. It's all based on this. And I can't help it now. I'm drawn to that this seems deliberate. So, to answer your question, it's this dualism, it's this constant battle between one or another. And I guess, when I leave this realm, I'm just going to have to say, I don't know. It seems like chaos reigns supreme here because that's what these gods are. They're chaos.
Mhm. Yeah, I think again, the
I don't
everything
know if I answered that right for you, Michael, but you know.
I think everything's been hijacked,
Yes,
so
sir. Yeah.
there's even the line of thinking, well, we know take Netanyahu. His real name was Milikowski. that's the family name going farther on back. And in fact, he may not have any actual ties to that area at all when you get
Lynn and
down to
I
it.
met BB.
Did you?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
What was your impression?
Well, I was of a different mindset. I can tell you I was there with a number of other evangelical Christians and political leaders, and you know, I had a different point of view on some things, but I felt that there was an anointing on the man.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
what I felt. And when you shake his hand, um, you know, yeah, it is. I'm recalling that very moment, but yeah, that's what I sensed.
yeah, kind of like he was chosen for something.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's the line of thinking that, again, if you're familiar with the Sabbateans, if you're familiar with, Khazaria and, even the concept of the Khazarian mafia, which is very real. There's, again, when we really get down to it, the governments of the world have been, for our lives, they're organized crime. They are organized crime. Unfortunately, I don't think it always was that way. I think,
I don't
that
know.
that's just the way of this system. But in our lives, I think it's been that way. But I
George
think,
W., by the way, when I shook his hand, cold,
Ooh,
yeah,
not surprising. Yeah.
cold.
Huh.
well,
Yeah.
that forked tongue's coming out.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
we were riding up in an elevator and in Dallas and yeah. That was before he became president. He was still governor of Texas at the time.
Yeah,
Cold.
I think again, it's just been used as a tool. It's
Yeah.
been used as a tool. It seems that the original peoples of so many places have been usurped, and then there's others that take on titles and take over land, take over political offices, acting like they are um, what they just conquered, what they just vanquished. It was a common practice too, like, king or duke of one area takes over another area, take on the titles. And we could see this in even in the religions, too. It's not what it seems. It's just a useful tool. Just a useful tool.
I love this discussions. I mean, this is like seriously in what you would see in what I imagine Ephesus must have been right around the turn of the century, where you would have intelligent conversation that would involve no set particular um, idea, but it's the fact that within the multiplicity and the diversity of the ideas, we find a solution. Because
Mhm.
I'm still hunting. I just got to be candid with you. Cindy, I wish I had your ability as an empath, to sense in some of it. But the burden that one has for that is you all know it, but it's a great sacrifice.
Mhm. Well,
And
yeah, we're going through so many changes right now, and I just keep thinking that right now we have Pluto. Pluto is in a very interesting position that it's really having a big effect on all of our lives right now. And what Pluto does is Pluto takes away the things that are not allowing us to grow. And sometimes that can be very, very painful. It could be a relationship, it could be someone in your life, it could be a pet, it could be a home, it could be a job. And if those things, maybe you're comfortable with them, and Pluto says, hey, you're not growing, got to take this away. And I'm looking at the comets and I'm looking at our political structure and I'm listening to you guys talk and I'm thinking, wow, Pluto right now, it's in a very strong position and it's all about ups and downs. And Pluto's just not very nice, but it's necessary because once we get comfortable, we stop growing. And I just feel that over the next couple of months, it could really yank a lot of stuff from a lot of people. And what does that mean? Is that going to be like worldwide? Does that mean a war? Does that mean, major change in the United States? Does that mean taking away our comforts? But this is what Pluto
they
does,
took away Charlie Kirk.
right? Yep.
Huge gap in the psyche of that. what do you see? What do y'all are sensing? I mean, Cindy, is if you could peer down, around the corner, what are you sensing? Because it's happening. If I was back in my Christianity days, I'd be up there on the bully pulpit saying, "This is the prophecy of Revelation, the Revelator, that this is the tribulation." And I can show you specifically this. I can go to Daniel 70 weeks. I can show you that this is the prophecy of the mud feet of the statue. So, yeah, I mean but so curious, what do you see?
A tremendous amount of loss to start with. And then after that, filling in of what's truly going to make us grow. And I don't think that's going to be like fluffy and nice like we would like it to be. I think it's going to be very hard and rough. That's what I see.
It was sweet upon the tongue until the stomach, and then it turned to wormwood, right? Is that how it
Mhm.
goes?
Yes, but
Something
then the
like that.
parasites are gone.
Uh, so while we still got some time, and I know we're running a little bit over, but
There's a little wormwood, Wayne.
look, you see that's what I'm talking about. They always say if you want to know you're in sync, what's the synchronicity,
Right.
and it
Yeah,
runs deep.
and then we're talking about like the things that they have to tell us, that could have been one of the biggest tells in Revelation. Take
Oh
wormwood,
yeah.
because we have this cancer plague upon the land. So yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting times. I think things are going to be rewritten. I think that's what Trump was kind of getting across. It almost felt, here's a good analogy. Um, when you have Pilate kind of washing his hands, right? Like, do what you want. I kind of give up. That's kind of the energy I was feeling from Trump when he was saying, well, we're going to send the weapons to NATO. They're going to do what they want. It kind of felt like that to me a little bit.
Biblical.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Um, I mean, I knew Perry Stone, and I don't know if you know who Perry Stone is. Get a chance, look him up. But he was used in the gift of prophetic prophecy, seeing things coming down, and it's real interesting if you follow that, because if you believe in prophecy, then there's no such thing as free will. Everyone's free will has already been prophesied into the prophecy that's going to take place, right? I don't know. Could be wrong on this, but it appears that everyone is, and it's both sides of this equation. Everyone sees prophecy. They're seeing the unfolding of prophecy. And I just wonder, is that really what's happening, or is this something that appears to be like prophecy, but no, it's different.
Yeah,
I don't know. If the aliens were to show up, I mean, how would Jesus Christ return? On a horse? I mean, that's what the book says, right?
He'd probably show off.
but that rider on the white horse, that's actually the next incarnation of Krishna, and or Vishnu.
I
So I
love
mean,
it.
it is, yeah. That's the Kalki, avatar, the one
It's
that comes in to wipe away the dark age.
wow. Are we still in the dark age then by that logic?
Well, we've gotten that we're technically out, but we're in a transition period which may last hundreds of years. So, in the bigger scheme of things, but yeah, this is part of things that have to be acknowledged. It just like the fact that there's other beings here, the extraterrestrials. We have to have like an open acknowledgement of that. You know, I think there might be key moments that have to take place, but there's a lot of which, well, let's go back to the Vedic point of view. There's this wise man that lived like the most pious life you can imagine. And so he's granted a boon to actually not die, but watch through the cycles. And so he gets to see, I think it's like 16 times the passing of the events that transpire that make up the Ramayana, and then like 14 times the events that make up the Mahabharata, which are the two biggest epic, from Hinduism. And he sees different outcomes each time. It's like, 8 times here, the good guys, won, and just to make it really simple, 6 times they didn't. So it's interesting. Are we Groundhog Daying in effect? What time is this that we've gone through? Are we trying to do better than last time? And maybe all these different possible prophecies are all just simply likely outcomes, depending on where all of our consciousness is.
I go with Groundhog Day. I mean, that one feels right. And it also feels right that, God is Bill Murray.
How about Morgan Freeman with the white suit?
Yeah.
And who was it even George with John Denver? Who was that? George Burns.
Yes,
He was like the original God.
that
I
was a good.
it's, I hadn't thought about that movie. I mean, wow, I love it. That was a good movie too. It was fun. It was, entertaining, and I always liked George Burns, but that world doesn't exist anymore. That's the thing about it, as you get older, you begin to see your world and reality gets further and further back, and it's being filled in with those who are creating the current one. And that's where that spatial consciousness comes in, and you're going, yeah, it's that cycle that you're allowed to perceive, which is very interesting.
Absolutely. Well, the guides have said that, when we incarnate, this is a reality that we can come back to again at any time. And if we're going to come back and just relive events, could it be that we come back and try to nudge them in a different direction?
Some say that, in 2012, we all died. And we're
Yeah,
just merely living, we're remembering a residual memory.
I don't know. It doesn't feel like when I was outside and floating in front of Source, it doesn't quite feel the same.
Does it? Thank you.
Feels
Did you
like
have,
I'm still here.
you know, but and it's someone wrote me and was talking about the frequency people are experiencing deja vu. It seems like the glitch in the matrix is sending out to everybody and I have to say, even myself this week, you know, I've had that intense, like, wait a minute, this feels awfully familiar.
Mhm.
Does that happen to y'all?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Lots of deja vu, lots of weird, like, boy, it feels like I've crossed this timeline before, and maybe I did it a little different this time.
Yeah, I often wonder too, um, and I'm convinced of this as I'm reading this book, I'm convinced that these beings that we're just now discovering that it's not space travel that they're doing. They're jumping literally interdimensionally.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that these portals that we're now witnessing, filming, it's to them, it's very normal. To us, it's like, holy crap, it's really true.
Well,
So
yeah, when we were in the desert, you could see these orbs come out of the darkness, and they would go across the sky, and they would go back into darkness.
Yeah, I videoed it, and it was weird because what the camera caught was not what we were witnessing. It was catching like elongated, almost like when you look at Northern Lights, something like that, like sprites. But we were seeing clearly these things were popping out of nowhere, traveling over Nellis Air Force Base, and then popping into nowhere.
And we watched that nightly.
We watched it all the time. Yeah, we had a place out there in the desert, and that would be our entertainment.
Yep.
wow. Wow. Um, See, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. That's what within me gives me the hope that, all right, we may not have all the answers, we may not have any of the answers, but I think we have a part of the answer.
Yeah. So when I remote viewed some of those beings, they were just kind of doing a job like, most of us, we have a job to go do. We do a thing, and that's what they were just living their daily life, and it wasn't anything spectacular to them. It's just what they did, and it was okay. So, yeah.
What a refreshing view. Say, I had ever, okay, so that kind of goes with the thought, someone was asking me, well, what do you do when you die? And um, I don't know why this keeps on doing that. Um, that it's not going to be floating on a cloud playing a little harp.
No,
You're
we
going to
probably have
continue.
ghost jobs. Have ghost jobs at the grocery store, the casino. We don't get out of our karma. We don't quit working.
I love this. I'll have to share with you later what I was seeing.
Okay.
The creators do have a sense of humor, right?
I think so. Yep.
And that's what, when I find a god that will laugh, do y'all know if is there a god or a goddess specific over laughter?
Who would
Well,
be
there's the laughing Buddha.
Well, there's Krishna.
Yeah, Krishna was a prankster. Yeah.
Krishna, really?
Oh yeah, total prankster. Always playing jokes on people, practical jokes, things like that, hiding stuff.
Especially as a child.
Loki would be one for the Norse, right?
Yes.
That is it. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Good ones.
And they say Mercury is a jokester too.
Our little friend,
Which one?
the one that was with us for a while, who was a guide with us. I'm forgetting his name now.
I don't
You
know.
remember that? He's a deity. He was a short guy. Remember, he was always hanging around.
I guess we've had them too, but we don't know at the moment. So
Yeah,
Okay.
we had one become a guide for a while, and the Egyptian.
the lion, the
Yeah.
lion face.
Yeah,
Okay, okay. That bothers me. I can't remember now, but he was an Egyptian god, and he came to me one night. I closed my eyes and I told Mike, I said, I see this lion and his tongue is sticking out and he's making faces at me. And Mike typed in lion god tongue sticking out, and up comes the name, and I still can't remember it right now. But he was a prankster.
yeah.
He
He stuck with us for several years, like helping us as a guide. And yeah, we were getting some information from him, channeling information. Again, a lot of the Egyptian deities go back to initial wave of Syrian beings from split, the star system Sirius coming here. Gosh, I forget what his name was.
Looking.
But yeah, he was a character.
Yeah,
Cool deal. Okay.
can't find it right now. It figures, but we have a little statue of him anyhow.
Folks,
So
I have a thing here that I need to address. I have a personal emergency that's coming in
okay.
here. So we're going to have to end the show, everyone, that they have rung me over a dozen times. So please forgive me.